How's it going, everybody? It's your boy. Incredibly consistent upload schedule here. No one even knows what my schedule is anymore, not even me. But today, I have some stories for you, some stories from my own life. These stories aren't from anything too recent. Matter of fact, it was really a conversation with a friend of mine from the school that I'm going to. That ended up kind of reminding me that I wanted to make a video like this. And it's a collection of 3 stories or so that all revolve around one specific theme. Stupid injuries. So without further ado, let's just sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and let's dive right into this. So, I think it's probably best to start off ones that happened a little bit earlier on in my life, I suppose. I think I was only about like maybe 4 or 5 during this time, and the only reason why I even remember this is because, well, I still have the injury of it to this day, and I'll get into that once I actually get into the story. So I was around 4 or 5. This was back when my biological father was actually still alive. He ended up passing due to skin cancer, and I didn't really get to know him that well, but there is one thing that I do know that I think he did relatively often, maybe? And that was, I guess, like, tinkering with, like, his bike. It's not a motorcycle kind of bike, it's, you know, just like a normal bicycle and whatnot. And it was one of these days in which I think he was, like, in the garage, you know, like, I think getting some tools or something like that. I don't know if he was working on the bike or if he just had the bike there upside down on a rack or something like that. It's very likely he was working on something with it. I have no idea for the life of me. But the only thing that I remember is that my 4 or 5-year-old brain had this immense idea, this glowing brain genius plan. And that plan was for me to spin one of the wheels and then try to stick my finger into, like, the spoke area of the wheel in order to try and stop it from spinning. Oddly enough, it worked a few times. You know, I did manage to stop it, but I think one point I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, and, well, you can probably take a guess as to what happened there. Like, yeah, it ended up kind of slicing off the tip of my right index finger. Not completely, though. I think it was basically still hanging on by, like, literally a thread, and that's the only reason why I was able to be healed in the first place. They immediately, like, the moment that my dad came back and saw, you know, I was just standing there, I think I was probably still in shock, and then it suddenly hit me as my dad reached, you know, where I was. Like, he saw it and just, like, immediately, like, you know, he went over, grabbed me, grabbed my mom, immediately rushed us into a car and drove us to, like, the nearest, like, urgent care place or something along those lines. I think it was probably, like, a small children's place that, you know, also dealt with broken bones or something, or injuries of this type, or at least they had the tools to deal with it. And the rest of it is just a blur. All I remember is that I had to wear a finger cast for a little while, and eventually it healed, but I think because, like, some muscles and tendons and whatnot didn't exactly connect right or anything, or didn't even connect at all, I can't really bend the tip of my finger, you know, like, on its own anymore. Like, I can if I, like, press down on it, but by itself, like, yeah, it ain't moving. I mean, it really hasn't affected me negatively at all, or even positively. It's just kind of there as just, like, a reminder that back then I was a really stupid kid and thought that I could stop a bicycle wheel with my finger. Yeah, that's probably the earliest one. The next one, this one happened quite a few years later. I think this was maybe 5 or so years ago, I can't remember. This was after, I think this was probably at some point after my mom and my current stepdad, you know him as Destin Goblin, you know, they ended up getting together. We decided to take a trip over to, I think it was St. Augustine, and we decided to get one of those family bikes to ride around on. You know, the ones where there's, like, 2 seats in the front for, like, the mom and the dad, or whoever the hell's, or the parents or whatever, to just kind of, like, you know, kind of sit in the front and control the bike, and the rest of the seats are just for, you know, friends and family that can fit onto whatever seats are actually there. And I wanted to ride in the front for whatever reason, I think. Again, this is one of those stories where it happened a decent while ago, and I only remember, like, bits and pieces of, like, some of the details, and I just vividly remember what ended up happening as a catalyst of this. But, you know, I decided to ride up in the front. Obviously, I wasn't tall enough to really reach the pedals properly. Like, I think I could probably reach, like, whatever pedal was the highest, and that was about as far as I could go. But, you know, just sitting there, and for some reason, I decided to just kind of, like, you know, kind of, like, have my leg drag behind, like, my right leg. A lot of my injuries are on the right side, I've just noticed that, but, you know, like my right leg just kind of like dangling on the side, and this ended up proving bad because it ended up getting sucked under like one of the wheels. It ended up getting trapped under there, and it really, oh god, I still remember it. It hurt like hell. It scraped up like the side of my right ankle, like really bad. Again, it's another one of these things where I still have like the scar of it. I'll probably have like images or videos or anything that kind of like correspond to it. Like, unlike the finger thing where it's just likely going to be a permanent thing, the scar on my ankle is like healed up enough where you would really only notice it if you were looking really closely. But, like, it's still there and I can still notice it, mainly because, you know, I still remember the story. And I just remember, you know, the moment that this happened, they ended up taking me over to, again, a nearby, like, you know, clinic or urgent care place or something like that. They wheeled me around in a wheelchair over there. And this is one thing that my parents still quote me on, but I just, like, remember just, like, blurting out as this was all going on that, you know, I made a terrible decision or something along those lines. This is something that my parents still quote me on, and, yeah, it's a little annoying, but it's just kind of like one of those things where, you know, I can look back at it and just kind of go, like, what the hell was I thinking? The third one doesn't exactly involve me getting injured as much as it is a former friend of mine. Now, for a little bit of context, I think as one of my birthday presents or a Christmas present, I can't remember which one, I just remember it was a gift for something. I got one of those, like, battery-powered electric kind of, like, razor scooters, you know? Like, you know, it was battery-powered, it could kind of basically be, like, you know, essentially a scooter version of, like, a motorcycle, if you will. Like, it could ride around on its own when it got up to a decent speed and whatnot. It was pretty fun to use for a while. But another bit of context for this story is that in our neighborhood during this time in which this happened, the sidewalks are really messed up, especially around like this field area where my friends and I would usually hang out at. And the main reason why the sidewalks are all screwed up, and you can probably guess this from a mile away, but it was mainly because, you know, the trees that were next to the sidewalks, you know, the roots were going up under the sidewalks, and it was messing them up, and it was causing them to be pushed out all over the place like a modern art piece. But I remember this one time, and it was just, you know, it was just my friend and I. My friend had brought out these two plastic lightsabers, and I brought out my scooter. And we had this brilliant idea that one of us would ride on this scooter and just, you know, ride past, you know, the other guy. And the other guy would try to use the lightsabers to, I guess, like, knock the other person off or something like that. I really do not know what the plan was. All I know is that those two things were involved, and it involved something really stupid with both of these objects together. And we thought that this was a good idea. And it came to my friend's turn to ride on the scooter and drive past me. And, you know, I had the lightsabers, and I tried, you know, swiping up at him, but I was, you know, probably just like a second too late. But the sidewalk wasn't. Because the front wheel of the scooter got caught on one of the raised ends of one of the sidewalk blocks. And I still remember this. It was like watching it in slow motion. He almost, like, flipped, if you will. Like, the scooter, like, flipped out from under him. He, like, soared into the air almost. And he landed really hard on his arms and rolled into the grass next to the sidewalk. And my scooter, I think, went off in the complete opposite direction of him. And the moment that I saw this, it, like, took me a second to process it before I ran over to him to check if he was okay. And before I even got a word out, the first thing that I saw was, like, my friend's hand being, like, dislocated. And immediately I was just like, oh god, okay, I'm gonna go get someone. Thankfully, this field, it's kind of like the separating point of, like, the two halves of the neighborhood, and his house was only, like, one house down from, like, one end of this field. It's not a really big field, but it's big enough that we can at least kind of, like, have some fun in it, you know? But, you know, I ran over to the house, rang the doorbell, his dad came out, and I was trying to frantically explain what the hell happened, and explaining that, you know, his son's arm is, like, dislocated or some garbage like that. And, you know, immediately he walked over, he saw my friend on the ground, you know, just kind of, like, sitting there. He was just laying there, almost like he was, like, contemplating life. Like, he was just laying there, like, not even doing anything, not even reacting. I think he was still in shock. I think he actually was, because he told me that he was still in shock until he actually got into the car to go to the hospital. And that's when all the pain rushed into him, and he was just like, oh god. And after this, my friend didn't even appear in school for like, I think 2 or 3 months after that. I can't remember how long, but I know it was like a few months. I was actually worried that they ended up like moving away because, you know, they thought it was like my fault that they thought that I broke they thought that I broke their son's arm or something like that. And I was just genuinely worried that, you know, he was okay, if he was okay, or if like they just like moved away because they thought I did it or something. I don't know. Just panic going in every direction all at once. And then just one day my friend just returns with 2 forearm casts over his arms, and he's just like, hey, what's up? I broke both my arms. But, that's basically it for today's video. It's just a collection of little stupid injury stories from my life. But if you guys enjoyed today's video, please consider leaving a like, that's very well appreciated. Leave a comment down below what you thought about the video, what you want me to talk about next. And also subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more content such as this. Also go ahead and follow me on Twitter, that's very well appreciated. And yeah, anyways guys, this has been Sadie. Injuries galore, and have yourselves a nice day.